Welcome, and thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce Vaughn Grisham and his wife Sandy, who we're so honored to host here in Jackson County for a 3-day visit, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. Let's make sure our mic is working. It's feedback? Okay, a little bit of feedback. I'm Rhonda Bowling from the Health Department, and last year a team of us attended Brushy Fork Institute at Berea College, and we were fortunate enough to sit in Vaughn's track, and it was talking about extraordinary communities, and the things that we learned there just inspired us so much, and the applicability of the model that he used to our area was so, I had never heard of economic development being applied so much to an area like ours, that we were determined to try to bring him here to let him share that information with the community. So we received a Flexi grant through the Appalachian Regional Commission to bring them here. And Vaughn and Sandy have been traveling around since Tuesday night, looking at the area, going to meetings, talking to different individuals and business owners, and getting a feel of the county. And with that, just getting a sense of the area. Tomorrow, he's going to meet with some of the community leaders and talk about what he thinks that we can do as a community to move forward. And our event tonight is to share with you the Tupelo model of Tupelo, Mississippi, and how they transformed from being a community similar to ours to, he can tell you how they are today, and you may know. And so with the civic engagement, with the citizens coming together, and you'll see in your program how it's the people that make the difference, and so we're going to hear from him about how that works. So thank you for coming, and we want to thank all of the agencies and businesses that have come together, all of the sponsors who have taken part to make this happen. So thanks a lot. And what I'd like to do right before Vaughn comes up, and I forgot to tell you that he's a professor at the University of Mississippi, where he taught sociology for many, many years, and now he just retired on July 1st, so now he's president emeritus, and he's the director of the McLean Institute for Civic Engagement and Community Development, where he works out in over 300 communities in the United States, over 33 states, I think he said, and particularly rural communities. So he's very familiar with our kind of place. And the good thing you might find out is that he lives in a community of 357 people, and as he says, 355 today because they're here. So, a small community he's from, so he totally relates, and then he has a real sense of what we can do. As you registered out there, we were also doing surveys for our awareness about the Jackson County Community Foundation. And if you fill one of those out, we asked you to put in to register for this book. So I'm just going to draw right now and see who won the book. I'm going to get way down there and shuffle it around. Let's see. Misha Goes, Gowes, I think. Oh, well, yes. Gover. Okay, I see. It's an R instead of an S. All right. Well, you win our Jackson County book. Yay. Uh-huh. Okay. If you would still like to do one of those as you leave, you can register for our next 30. Every time we get 30 of those surveys, we draw for a book, and we can call you at home or whatever. So thank you. With no further ado, I'll let Vaughn get started.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rhonda. Let me begin by thanking all of you for taking out time from what I know is a very busy life to be here as a part of your commitment to your community. And when I find people like yourselves who take off time to come to a session like this to help move a good community to an even higher level, I feel a kinship. and you would honor me, and I'm going to ask the favor of you that you honor me by seeing me as a partner in what you do. And I don't know that I deserve that yet, but I see you as people who I'd love to partner with in helping to raise the quality of the life in Jackson County. Now, I want to thank also Rhonda for all the work that she's done. If you saw the schedule that she's put together for us, you would know that she has worked extremely hard. She's been absolutely tireless in taking us around and helping us with everything. So will you join me in just showing your appreciation for her work? Okay. Now, how's the sound? It's being recorded, so that's important that this be good. What I'd like to do, and I think everybody understands why we're here, is to say, well, how is it we can move our community to a higher level? And I'd like to begin by just simply talking about the times in which we live. And I brought Tom Brokaw's newest book. This is a book that I would urge every person in attendance to read. All of us know Tom Brokaw with NBC News, and he has a book called The Time of Our Lives. What Tom has done here is to shorten your effort to sort of see what's happening in the United States at the present time, and then some suggestions on how we deal with some issues that must be dealt with, cannot be ignored. Here's what he says in his opening sentence. What happened to the America I thought I knew? And what he's telling us here is there's been such a transition in terms of the technology and the other things that the world that I grew up in is not very familiar. It's a whole new world. I recommend this book for a couple of reasons, one of which is that I hope that you would read it. But those of you who don't have the time to read or don't care to read, this book is also available on audio books, and it's available through Cracker Barrel. My wife and I remember the day that my parents loved Cracker Barrel, and I thought, oh, Cracker Barrel's for old people. Everything's soft there. All the food is soft, and I hated even to go into a Cracker Barrel. But at any rate, they do have these books for rent, and so I recommend it. Put it on and listen to it, and I think that it will not just inspire you. It will inspire you, but it'll do much more than that. What it will do is give you some very concrete ideas about what we could be doing here in Jackson County and in eastern Kentucky to address some serious issues. Now, Chapter 1 talks about getting the fundamentals right. Getting the fundamentals right. That's what we're going to talk about this evening. We can't get into all of the kinds of detail that I would like to do. We'll save that for tomorrow. But let's try to get the fundamentals right tonight. Just lay out and see what they are. And I'm going to engage you in an exercise in just a minute. And Sandy, you'll help me with it, and I think Rhonda will. And as Sandy is getting together, Sandy is my partner in all my research. I'm going to brag about her for just a moment. She's a community college teacher, and on the day that she retired, her administration and the teachers recognized her as being the outstanding teacher in the history of her community college, and they have established the Sandy Grisham Excellence in Teaching Award. And each year she goes back to give that award to somebody who's doing innovative things in the field of teaching. She has also had a Fulbright scholarship and has lived and worked in Pakistan, and she is a successful author, so she's great as a partner. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is that in all of these activities that we do, one of the first things we want to do is to find a partner. We find that necessary in all the communities we do. Now, all of you have a card, right? So what we just suggested to you from Tom Brokaw is that the America that I knew doesn't exist anymore. It's a whole different world. And we're going to talk about the reality of the world and sort of how it changed. And it's not going to change back. And say, okay, how do we deal with this world? This is the world we've got. This is the world we lived in. So what I'm going to remind you of is that there is a very well-known book by a man by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville, Tocqueville. Tocqueville wrote this book in 1835 called Democracy in America. It has never been out of print, nor should it be out of print. What he says, Tocqueville was an aristocrat who came from France to the United States because he recognized that the United States had gotten almost all their ideas for democracy from France. Thomas Jefferson had brought almost every idea from France to the United States. It wasn't even the United States then. The United States had its revolution and then made a democracy. And Tocqueville wrote in 1835, this will become one of the great nations, perhaps the great nation in the world. We were just a backwater then. And here's the premise he worked on. He said, in France, we also had a revolution. We got a dictator. They had a revolution in the United States. They got a democracy that worked. What's the difference? And here's what he concluded. He said, in the United States, these citizens take citizenship responsibilities seriously. And when they see an issue and when they see a problem, they address it. Pretty quickly in this country, our forefathers recognized the need for public schools, and they built them. One-room schools, but they built them. Almost every problem they encountered, they came together as a group and began to address these as a matter of things that had to be done. I believe that that's part of the key that's going to make this work. Now, let's turn to some realities of the world in which we live, with the idea that by and large we need to take our responsibilities as citizens seriously and become engaged in these issues. Now, let's look at several realities of the world we live in. The first is the times in which we live are revolutionary. Often when you're in the midst of a revolution, you don't really recognize it. But this is revolutionary. Do you know the man Peter Drucker? Raise your hand if you know him. Peter Drucker has a wonderful article called The Next Society. In some of the communities where I work, we've distributed as many as 1,500 copies of that article, which talks about the times in which we live. But the first thing he tells us is we're in revolutionary times, meaning that the times change, they change rapidly, and that's never going to change. In fact, the situations will change even more rapidly. So that what is required is that we're continually adapting, continually changing. All right, let's test that. Let's look at one area, and here's where I'm going to get you to use those cards and pencils. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to answer it out loud. I'd like for you to write the answer. I told the group yesterday, when I was young, I thought I must be mentally retarded because the teacher would throw out a question and I'd be sitting there thinking about it, and Susie would have her hand up and answering the question, and I couldn't figure it out. So for people that are slow like me, I'm going to get you not to answer it out loud. I'm going to get you to write down the answer. The proposition we've just made is that our times are revolutionary, that changes are occurring, that will always be there. We are a part of the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution changed the way human beings live forever. Now, let's think about this for just a minute. How people earn a living really shapes their whole lifestyle. Reflect on that. That how you earn a living, how people earn a living, shapes our whole lifestyle. Let's test that for just a moment. The Industrial Revolution began in the 1760s with the invention of the steam engine. So it kicks in 1800. And here's my question. Don't answer it out loud, but write it down. In the year 1800, you can get your pens and cards ready. In the year 1800, what percent of the U.S. population farmed for a living? So write your answer, everybody. In the year 1800, which is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the question is, what percent of the U.S. population farmed for a living? Got it all written down? Now what's the answer? Now you can speak it. What's the answer? What percent of the U.S. population farmed for a living in 1800? What's the answer?
I'm saying 75%.
75. 90. Got higher than that?
98.
It was close to 98. At least 95% we know farmed for a living. So if you didn't farm for a living, what would you do? You tell me. You can tell me out loud on that one.
Steal.
You could steal. Not a good thing, and we'd discourage that one. You could work for a farmer. You could be a blacksmith working for a farmer. You could be a merchant. Who would your customers be? You could be a minister. Who would your congregation be? You could be a physician. Who would your patients be? You could be an attorney. Who would your clients be? You could be an architect. Who would your clients be? In other words, everything, you agree with me. Everything is built around agriculture, right? No question. Let's flash forward to the year 2012, September 2012. And here's your question. In the year 2012, right now, September 2012, what percent of the U.S. population farms for a living? Write your answer down. What percent of the U.S. population farms for a living? Write down your answer. And what's the answer? 5? Could be as low as 2. Could be as low as 2. Laurie, do you know for sure? The figure I saw was 2%. 2%. So we've gone from everybody being a farmer, right, to 2%. Now, we couldn't possibly produce as much food and fiber using 2% of the population as we did when we had 95%. Is that right? Come on. That's an easy question. That's not right. We produce more food and fiber using 2% than we did with 95%. How do we do that? All the technology, right? The machinery, the biology breakthrough, the chemistry, all those things came together, and we can produce more food with only 2%. Now, we met with Jeff earlier tonight, and Jeff's with Extension. And Jeff, I'm going to come back to some of the things that you're doing, but not right now. Agriculture remains as important today as it was in 1800, right? It's just as important. It hasn't diminished in importance at all. It's just that we don't need as many people. Okay, did those people ever find a job? We just eliminated 95% of the jobs. Did they ever get another job? Yes. All right, we know they got a job doing what?
Probably building farm machinery.
Could have. They went to the cities and worked in factories, didn't they? Right? And they did. Okay, let me give you a figure. In 1960, manufacturing in the United States reached its peak. In 1960, manufacturing reached its peak. Between 35 and 40% of the U.S. population was engaged in factory work or industrial work. Now, here's your next question. Write this down. September 2012, what percent of the U.S. population is engaged in manufacturing today. So write that down. What percent of the U.S. population is engaged in manufacturing today? And what's the answer? Pardon? 20? 10? It's 15. 15% of the population is engaged in, now that'll vary from region to region. So I live in a heavy manufacturing area where we have 22% of our people, but 15% is the national average. So now think about it. If you can't make a living farming, there's not jobs there, it's important, and you can't make a living in manufacturing, how can you make a living? Write that down. Write down. Where are the jobs? We've already said that there's not many jobs in agriculture. It's extremely important, but not many jobs. And Jeff's doing some things that are very important that I want to talk to you about later. And you can't get a job in manufacturing. What kind of job would pay you a decent living? What's the answer? In the services, and in particular what services? In the technology, and it's what is called the knowledge economy. The knowledge economy. That's a term that's coined by Peter Drucker. And that's about all the jobs that are out there, right? That's it. If you want a decent living, you work in the knowledge economy for the most part. That's not to diminish manufacturing, not to diminish agriculture, but the jobs are pretty much in the knowledge economy. Now, I grew up in a poor Mississippi. I am the son of a son of the poor South. And I am absolutely passionate about helping to raise the quality of life for our people. And so what I did was to look around to say, where are the communities that are doing well in this kind of setting? Where are they? Now, I'm going to give you a couple more questions, and then I'm going to tell you some of the communities I found and what they're doing to help you think through what you could do. Let me give you a couple other things. So the economy has gone from agriculture to knowledge. Now, there are other major shifts that you need to consider. The demographic shifts I want to talk about real quickly. In the United States and in every industrial society, there are three clear transitions with the population. First of all, the population is aging. Now, the significance of that cannot be ignored. If you just looked at your figures in Jackson County, and you traced out from 1900 to 1910, 20, 30, and come up to now, you'd be astonished at how your population has aged. Several things there. That means, okay, on a personal level, we have a social system with the Social Security that was designed in the 1930s to start giving you some Social Security at 65 when people lived to the average age of 67. 2 years. Now, people who live to be 80 can logically expect to live to be 90. So on a personal level, that causes all kinds of adjustments that have to be made. But think about the workforce and what we need there. So we're aging. Secondly, fewer children are being born. This is true of all industrial societies. Fewer children are being born. Right now, there's no industrial society that actually replaces its population. Are you aware of that? There's not even Catholic countries. No industrial society on the planet Earth reproduces itself. So you've got an uneven situation in which you've got an aging population, fewer children. Think about that for the workforce and what happens there. And it's uneven because in the nations south of the Rio Grande, it's a very large population, surplus population, and in Africa, same thing. But in the other countries, they're going to depend on immigrant labor. That's a touchy subject in every industrial society. But dealing with immigration is absolutely a necessity for all industrial societies. There's no other option. There's no other option. Now, the other demographic transition is this. In all industrial societies, we are urbanizing. People moving into cities. Here's your last question for this exercise. I want you to write this down. What percent of the U.S. population, lives in a metropolitan area of 1 million or more? What percent of the U.S. population lives in a metropolitan area of 1 million or more? Write it down. What percent of the U.S. population lives in a metropolitan area of 1 million or more? Write it down. What's the answer? What's the answer? Yeah. It's over a majority. Could be up around 64%. The majority of people live in super metropolitan areas. Now, we're small towns trying to compete in that world. This morning when I met with a group, your rival is not your neighboring counties. They're your ally. They don't take any jobs from you, guaranteed. Your jobs are being taken from Beijing and Tokyo, Yokohama, and in all those major places. So we need to get past our football rivalries and figure how we can work as a region. It's the only way we can compete. We can't compete unless we can learn to think regionally. Communities that do that are doing okay. Now, taking all those realities, the knowledge economy, the urbanization, all those, what I did was to turn to, I wrote to every economic development group in every state, an economic development group. And I wrote the question, I said, would you tell me 2 communities in your state that are thriving in this economy? Would you give me just 2 nominations from each state? And not every state gave me 2. Some states gave me only 1. But I came out with 94 recommendations. It's 50 states, and each one of them giving me 2, and a few giving me only 1. And I spent a year and a half looking at those communities. And then, lo and behold, settled on this little community in Mississippi. I never dreamed I'd be studying a community in Mississippi. It was Tupelo, Mississippi. And I thought, my gosh, I can't believe this. I went over and saw a friend of mine in Tupelo who's African American. And I said, Mr. Reese, you know, I've been working on this for a year and a half, and I'm going to write a book about the most successful communities in the United States and using them as a model. And the community I found that most impressed me is Tupelo, Mississippi. And I said, if I write Tupelo, Mississippi, I won't have any credibility. Nobody will believe there can be a community in Mississippi that could be a model for the rest of the nation. This is the poorest state in the United States. So he said, Grish, I got a title for your book. Can any good come out of Nazareth? Can any good come out of Nazareth? He said, that's what they said of Jesus. Couldn't be any good because he came out of Nazareth. And then he encouraged me. He said, Vaughn, if Mississippi can do it, any place can do it. So I began to write about Tupelo. So let's get in there and learn the lessons from Tupelo. Let me paint this in very broad strokes and tell you why you might be interested in Lee County and Tupelo, Mississippi. Tupelo is in Lee County, Mississippi. Quite aware that there's a Lee County, Kentucky, and I've been there. So, for the census, is it coming in? Can you hear me? Sorry about that. In 1940, Lee County could have been the poorest county in Mississippi. That's a sad situation to be in. Today in the United States, do you have any idea what the average family earns in a year? The average family in the United States has 2 breadwinners. How much money would they make in a year? You come from an average family probably. How much money does the average family make in a year in the United States today? Annual income, 2 members. What's the answer? 30,000? 50? It's closer to 50, between 45 and 50. In 1940, the average family in Lee County, Mississippi made, you want to make a guess at how much the average family, there were 7 members, 5 of them were working and earning an income at that time. So what did they make in a year's time? You want to guess? Very close, $750. That's not Bangladesh poor, but that's poor. Half the population was functionally illiterate. So they were poor, they were uneducated, and they were divided and fighting among themselves. Let's flash forward to 2012, and here's what you've got. Tupelo was able to industrialize without urbanizing. And here's what you got. This is a town of 34,000 today. It was 6,000 back there in 1940. Today, this town of 34,000 has 51,000 jobs. 51,000 jobs. 200 different industries. 48 international corporations. 18 Fortune 500 companies. They outgrew the national economy for 30 consecutive years in Mississippi. Their educational system is regarded as the best in the state. They consistently win the academic decathlons and all the academic awards. Not only do they win all the academic awards, they also win all the athletic awards. That's just a reminder, you can have good schools and good athletics. They've done it. So, that's a place we might be interested in learning from. The U.S. Department of Agriculture identified Lee County as the model for rural development in the United States. The Federal Reserve System recognized Tupelo as a model for the United States. The National Civic League, which is out of Denver, Colorado, has given them the All-American City Award. It's one of the top 10 cities. It was the first southern city to win the award. There are Kentucky communities that have won it. It won that award, they won the National Civic League Award, All-American City. They were the first southern community to do it, first community in the United States to win it twice, first community in the United States to win it 3 times, first community in the United States to win it 4 times. That's a community you'd want to learn from, right? Is that agreed? Okay. Here's the question. How did they do it? It's no great secret. In fact, I found this was true of all these successful communities, not just Tupelo. In fact, if it were not true of all of them, I wouldn't be telling you. Their situation is so dramatic. That's what makes their case so very interesting, is it's so dramatic. In a knowledge economy, and this doesn't require a whole lot of thinking, I guess, the vice president of the Federal Reserve Board in Minneapolis says the number one component in economic development is, let me repeat that. This guy's Art Rolnick. He's the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board out of Minneapolis. He says the number one component or element of economic development is, you fill in the blank. What's the answer? What is it? People, but what does he go further and say? What is it? Now, he didn't say that. That's important, though. I agree with you there. He said early childhood education. Does that surprise you? Early childhood education is the key, according to him. The data tends to support that. Why is that so important? Early childhood education. Why is that so critical? Why would he list that? You tell me. Why? Why not university education?
With good early childhood education, university education comes next.
Yeah. Unless the foundation is there, nothing else works. Here's the nature of the knowledge economy. It does not require a college degree. In a knowledge economy, what it requires is that you're going to get some kind of educational training to do the work you need. Yeah. Yes. So you've got to have the foundation. We have no excuse here in Jackson County unless we developed a first-rate early childhood education. Tupelo and Lee County was working on this in the 1940s. They had created daycare centers and early childhood education programs in every rural community and in Tupelo. In every one of them. Let me ask you this question. I told you there were 48 international corporations in Tupelo, 18 Fortune 500 companies. Simple question. What are they doing in backwater Mississippi? Why do they come there? What's the answer? You're heading in the right direction. Yeah. Go ahead with the workforce, though. Tell me about that. It's an educated workforce. Yeah. Toyota just came there. And I'm very proud of Georgetown for having a Toyota plant. Tupelo went up and learned from them. I asked the Toyota people, why'd you come here? It's an educated workforce. And that's what they've got. An educated workforce. These people have, by and large, put together a system in which education is pivotal. I'm going to tell you a quick story that's not in Tupelo. It's in Dallas, Texas. Very quickly, in South Dallas, Texas, Sandy and I work in an all-black, all-African-American neighborhood. It's the poorest neighborhood in all of Texas. And they have developed a school where 67% of the parents are single parents, 17% are no-parent homes. The children live with some other person other than a biological parent. So 84% are single parent and no parent. Our kids score at the 91st percentile, and we've never had a dropout. I set that out as a challenge to you. If we can do this in a poor African-American neighborhood, there is no reason we shouldn't be doing this in Jackson County. We have no excuse for that. No excuse at all. Now let me show you how they built this program in Lee County. Because education is the key. That's the foundation of everything they've got. So let's talk about how'd you do that? Because Jeff was dealing with a problem here in terms of funding. The question always will come around to funding and money. So here's what they did. I talked today to the Kiwanis Club, and I asked this question. Is it in the self-interest of a businessman, and I'll rephrase that and ask, is it in the self-interest of every person here that every individual in Jackson County receive a good education? Is it in your self-interest? It is. It is in your self-interest, whether you own a business or not. That is in your self-interest. So here's what they did in Tupelo and Lee County. The process always begins with a single individual. What I hope comes out of this meeting, and I've met so many fine people here in Jackson County, I've just been blown away with some of the things that y'all do. I'm not trying to flatter you. You have to have at least one individual, just one individual, that thinks that this is the most important thing in the world. And that individual then has got to find a partner. Now, what you will find is always work with the idea of self-interest. Who has a self-interest in making this happen? Economic and community development cannot be an add-on job. Let me repeat that. Economic and community development cannot be an add-on job. You've got to see it as a part of what you do. In other words, every business leader needs to say, look, if people make more money here in Jackson County, I'm going to profit, right? In other words, it's part of my business plan. And Tupelo is going to make that a part of their business plan. And here's exactly the way they did it. George McLean, when he started this process, was 28 years old. If he were sitting in this audience, he'd be one of the youngest people here. 28 years old. And he's an ardent Presbyterian, and he holds a Bible class every Thursday at his house. And for about 15 or 20 minutes, they talk about the Bible, and the rest of the time they say, how are we going to improve the quality of life in this town? And he wins over people one-on-one. In many cases, if he knew that he needed you, he needs you because you're at the newspaper, he's going to invite you. Won't you come? And he knows that you're interested in education. And you've got a reputation of doing things. He's going to say, won't you come to our Bible class? Then later on, we're going to talk about some other things as well. And that's the way it does. They just have these conversations. Community and economic development really doesn't take place in a meeting like this. It takes place usually one-on-one. For me, I will go to see somebody I know I got to have and say, Susie, we got to have you. I know you're busy. Can you rearrange your schedule and come in? Because we got to have you. What would it take to get you there? And he does that one-on-one, conversation after conversation. And what he did on one occasion is to take the 1930 census, and he went literally into every store, every business. He said, look here, the average farmer, at this time they didn't even make $750 a year. They make almost nothing. And he said, as long as your customers are poor, you'll be poor. He went to one guy who owned a particular store. I won't call the store because I wouldn't want to embarrass the guy. And he said to him, how much did you gross last year? Hell, he said, none of your damn business. And so he said, I bet you grossed $2,000. Hell, he said, I grossed $8,000. He said, how would you like to gross $10,000 or $12,000 or $14,000? How can I do that? I can't work another job. He said, no, but you can invest in your people. Let me show you what we'll do. Now, I told this today at the Kiwanis, so for those of you who were there, I apologize for telling the story again. What he did, he looked at the farmers, and clearly the cotton farmers were losing money. They're actually getting poorer every year. Their soil was worn out. And so the harder they worked, the more money they lost. And so we were just getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And he went specifically then to farmers who were trying to supplement their income with poultry. What he had done in this case, he had gone to some of the best agricultural schools in the United States. He started really at Cornell, and he went to every university. And I tell you this story not to entertain you, but to give you a hint. Every university, agricultural university, and said, we are poor cotton farmers. We're poor. We're not stupid. We're not lazy. We're poor. How do you raise the income level of poor farmers? And they said, well, you got to get out of cotton. Well, what can we do? They said, you got to get into something that'll give you an income every week. What will that be? Poultry and dairying. Okay. Now he goes back and he does his homework. Now he's got a job, so this guy's working 16 hours a day. And what he does now, he goes out to poultry farmers and he said, how much do you get for a dozen eggs? They figured it out. They all got 14 cents a dozen. Well, he went back and did his homework and discovered, and this is interesting, it cost them 14.5 cents to produce a dozen eggs. So they too are just getting poorer. Now, what do you do about that? Well, what he does here then is that he contacts the top people in the United States in poultry. In this case, they happen to be in Illinois, in Chicago. And he goes to them and says, would you come down and help teach our poultry farmers how to be more productive? And they do. And originally, the money is paid for by the business people. They put the money up to get them. I'm going to pause here to tell you that if you're going to, you've got a fine community, but if you're going to have a better community, everyone's going to have to dig in your pockets, come up with money, and say, we're investing in our community. The same way that I would buy stock in Berkshire Hathaway or an Apple or whatnot, we here in Jackson County are going to have to invest in our community. Think about it. We go out and try to recruit an industry and say, would you come here and spend $100 million to establish a factory? Well, what have you done for yourself? How much money have you put up? They're not going to come. So, George McLean and the business people put up the money. They mobilize the farmers and pull them together. The nature of community development is to get people to work together toward their common. These poultry people, then, and I won't go into all the details what they had to do, but it involves a great deal of work. But they're able to sell, they find a whole new market. In fact, they begin to sell their eggs in Chicago, where they can get 25 cents a dozen instead of 14 cents. And each farmer pledges that he will take that 25 cents and put it into a common, into a cooperative. And they pool their pennies, literally, until now they can afford to bring in the top experts themselves. They no longer have to depend on the business people, but the business people remain their partners. Now, the next thing is dairying. McLean had always suspected that's where the real money was going to be, was in dairying. But he had gone up to Wisconsin, a professor in Wisconsin, and I told this story at the Kiwanis Club, I'll tell it again. George McLean, excuse me. Can you hear me now? Okay. He goes into the office of probably the top dairy expert in the United States. And he says, I'm George McLean, I'm from Lee County, Mississippi. How do you raise the income level of these farmers? He says, if you don't know the answer to that question, you ought to get out of the teaching profession because you're not doing anybody any damn good. And he never used profanity, but he did this time. All you're doing is drawing a salary. And the fellow took it as a challenge, and he said, well, what you need to do with the dairying, he says, your stock isn't any good. And you don't know how to do dairying. I mean, your people don't know how to manage dairy crops. And so he finds in Denmark a fellow experimenting in artificial insemination. And he doesn't go there. He's ready to go there, and he finds out that a fellow at Princeton has already gone there and has learned how to do it. So he goes to the business people, and he says, this is going to cost us, in today's currency, about $2 million. To go to the Isle of Jersey, to get the world champion Jersey bull, then to establish an artificial insemination program and work on it. So where are they going to get $2 million? You tell me. You need $2 million in today's currency. Where are you going to get it? Not a bad guess. Where are you going to get it? Where would you get it? Come on, you're smart people. I know that. I've had conversations with you for the last 3 days. Where are you going to get the $2 million? What's the answer? You could, but he wants to know what you got for collateral. There's no other option. They pool their money. Many of those businessmen told me I actually went to the Citizens Bank and took out a loan to contribute that money. 17 merchants put up the money. Some of the big farmers put up the money. They pooled their money. They went to the Isle of Jersey. They got the championship bull. They used their artificial insemination. The first year that those cows began to give milk, it added $1 million to the income. Within 5 years, it added $10 million, and within 10 years, it added $100 million. Is that amazing? Now, you got $100 million in effect that's coming into your community. Did the merchants get their money back? Did they? They got it many times over. Here's what they did that's so smart. They created an organization called the Community Development Foundation. You don't have one, very few places do. The Community Development Foundation is the economic engine. And what it does then is it's a powerful organization today, but it's just a fledgling organization. Merchants put their money in it. You become a member of this. Today they have approximately 1,500 dues-paying members. The first year they had 150. 150 dues-paying members. Actually, I think it's 157. And these people put in their money that they're making, right? Just like the poultry people said, I'm going to put a penny back in. These people said, I'm going to put 2% or 3% of our profit. Some of the companies put as much as 30% of their profits into this. So you got a lot of money now. Now what do you do with it? This Community Development Foundation has a lot of money. What are you going to do with it? You're going to invest it, but where are you going to invest it? In what? Where specifically in your community? Education. Education. That's how they start the early childhood education programs. Education. They're going to put money consistently in education. They create a community college. You want to take a guess how much the state of Mississippi put into that community college? 0. The key there is having that community college. They have a branch of the University of Mississippi. You want to know how much the state of Mississippi put up for that? 0. Now, what they do so well is to coordinate economic development and education. So that if you own a factory, what will happen is that they will talk with you continually about what do you need. And there will be an individual who goes to the community college, and that person will link specifically the community college with your needs. Now, let's think about this for a moment. I told you that they have all these industries. At one stretch, how much time do I have? Oh, goodness. Okay. We're going to ignore her right now. I hope you're not getting bored with this. They set up these community colleges, as I said, and I gave this figure out today, and so I'm going to do it real quick. Between 1980 and 1999, Lee County, Mississippi added an average of 1,000 new industrial jobs a year. Let that settle in. Between 1980 and 1999, for 19 years, they averaged 1,000 new industrial jobs a year. Now, I don't know whether this will have anything you can relate to. The question is, how many new industries is that? What would you guess? How many new industries? If you've averaged 1,000 new industrial jobs for 19 years, and they have, how many jobs, how many new industries a year are you getting? Any idea? Come on, give me a guess. Pardon? 3 to 4. Yeah, usually never more than 3 or 4. What they do, they invest in the industries they've already got. and they grow them. And they grow them primarily because of that link between the community college and the work itself, having these good workers coming out of that community college. So there you are. That's just sort of part of the Tupelo story. I got to add one more, then we're going to throw it open for questions and answers. They created the Community Development Foundation, and it's still the driving force. But they create another organization, and I know that, Rhonda, you're working on that, and that is a community foundation. I would urge you, beg you, to create a community foundation here in Jackson County. You're going to need money for a lot of things. Jeff, we talked about this earlier. Jeff is at a point now with some entrepreneurial programs which are great. He needs just a little bit of money. He needs a little seed money. And a community foundation could set aside things and say, we're going to support entrepreneurs with this. We're going to grow our own businesses. We're not going to go out to other places and say, come into Jackson County and bring this. We're going to grow our own businesses. Tupelo does that. They grow a lot of their own businesses. They have a fine entrepreneur center. And the money out of the community foundation is spent exclusively on what? Education, right? Education and helping new entrepreneurs. That's what they do. They invest in new entrepreneurs. They grow their own jobs. And that's one of the things that we've got to do here in Jackson County, is to grow our own jobs. Now, I mentioned in an earlier meeting that there's a community in Thomasville, Alabama. Thomasville, Alabama is a relatively small town, just a little bit larger than you are. And it had been deteriorating over a long period of time. They came over and spent about a week studying Tupelo. Went back, took the ideas, came back again, went back and forth, and they got it right. There are a lot of communities in the United States that have studied Tupelo. There's actually over 500 communities that studied it, and over 100 international nations have come there. But Thomasville is not that far from you. I talked with the mayor just within the last couple of weeks. Well, it's been probably more than the last couple of months. This little town, which had stores closing and going nowhere, has more than $200 million worth of economic development going on right now in September. What you could do is make a trip to Thomasville, get together a group of people, go down, see what they're doing, learn what they're doing, bring it back, have Sheldon Day come back. He's the key guy there. Talk with him about it. I would urge you to do that. I would beg you to do that sort of thing. What you want to do is look carefully at a strategy. And I'm going to propose the strategy right now. We're going to talk more about it at the exit. What you want to do is to develop a plan in which you have a short-term goals. You have some short-term goals that can be reached in a year and maybe in a month. Set up some short-term goals and some long-term goals. Your long-term goals are going to be job creation and education. One of your long-term goals ought to be to increase your tourism. That's going to bring money to you. You ought to work hard on retiree attraction. There are so many people who have come through your schools that would be now retiring with money. Get you a first-rate retiree attraction program. Have them coming back here, settling in, bringing their resources, their intelligence, their money, their ideas. Set up a tourism program that's just first-rate, that will do the kinds of things you want. But let's talk about the short-term goals. I've mentioned a place that Sandy and I have come to love, and it's Huntington, West Virginia. Don't know if any of you know Huntington, West Virginia, But Huntington was a city of nearly 100,000 in 1960. Its population shrank to 48,000. They were desperate. And here's what they do, and here's what I'm proposing that you might do for your short-term goals. They have a program which they call Chat and Chew. And people come together every Thursday afternoon. They meet at a bar. You could go to a bar, coffee shop, whatever you like. And they talk about things that they'd like to do that's going to raise the quality of life and that they're willing to do. I find in all kinds of communities people coming with ideas and coming and dumping it on the mayor's desk. No, that won't get it done. These are something that these people want to do. And so they started off with just 4 couples. They now have more than 100 people that come every Thursday. And they say, these are the projects we work on. And they get it done. I can't get into all the details. But create a Chat and Chew program. You may have something comparable to it right now, where people come together and say, this is something I'd like to do. Sandy knows that one of their projects was a dog park. And when I heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, a dog park. You lost 42,000 jobs. What are you doing creating a dog park? It's one of the best ideas they could have come up with. Because now these people with dogs come out and meet one another. And they're building up these ties. They spent $100,000 on a dog park, but it's successful. I would never challenge anything you suggest. What is it you want to do? What is it that you're just passionate about doing? And who are the people who can help you? Don't worry about the money. The money will actually come. If you get the good people with good ideas, you get the money. Jeff, you're going to get your money too, because it's a great idea. But if you get the good people with the good ideas, you're going to get the money. So I'd urge, as your short-term projects, set up things that you'd like to get done in the next year, and then get the people together and begin to do it. For your long-term projects, as I said, it's got to be job creation and education. And it would be good if a lot of your short-term projects feed into the long-term project. But I'm not going to say it's got to be limited to that. But if you're going to get jobs out of tourism, you're going to get jobs out of retirees. The good thing about tourism, these strangers come and bring money to your place, and they just leave it there. They don't require health care services. They don't require educational services. They don't require any of these kind of infrastructure. I visited today your telephone cooperative. That just blew me away. I think that's one of the most impressive days that I've spent. I used to worry about Eastern Kentucky communities and West Virginia communities because they didn't have decent highways. Well, in an electronic age, that's the way. You've got a system here which is one of the best I have seen in the entire United States. It is fantastic. You talk about a resource that you've got. It's fantastic. It's just great. You got other resources all over the place. So begin to look at your assets and say, what is it we've already got? What is our internal asset that we can use and start to use it? Then look and say, well, what external asset? In other words, we don't have it here, but we have access to it. You have access to Eastern Kentucky University. You have access to the University of Kentucky. You have access to Berea College. You have access, really, if you wanted it, to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You have access to everything in the world through that road right over there that these people have provided you. So you say, all right, here's what we got and here's what we're going to build on. Now, who's doing the best? Well, I'm going to close and let you have Q&A, let you have question and answer. And forgive me for going over. I've recommended that you form a multi-county leadership program. And y'all have already got one that you've already got started. So I'd feed into the program that you've got and combine with other counties and work on that, and your leaders and your leadership program will give you the soldiers to go out and do the work. This is what we found, is that a lot of people won't volunteer, but they will go to a leadership development program, and so that gives you feet on the ground. They can do that grunt work for you. And that's the way they learn to be leaders, is doing the grunt work. So there's just so many opportunities out there. And I'm so excited about what you can do here. So I'm going to shut up and throw it open to question and answer. So do you need a break? Do you need to walk around, stretch your legs? If you want to stand up, please do. But let's throw it open to whatever questions and answers, questions you have. And it's my job to do the answers. Yes. Yes, sir. This gentleman here I met over in Estill County is a fine community leader. Go ahead.
Number one, I'd encourage you to start a community foundation. There was a piece in the news recently in Illinois. They had started a community foundation. This town thought they were going to collapse. They were going to have to basically go bankrupt. And they had formed a community foundation several years ago. A gentleman passed away who had moved out of the community but had grown up there, and he left $128 million to the foundation. So he loved it. That was what even though he had moved away, he grew up there. His parents, his whole family were there. So the thing with the community foundation is, think of his kids. They didn't know about that community, and they may be living somewhere else. So community foundation will help you a lot of ways, and it'll help you help and pull some funds. One thing is, I kind of think about, and I do some of this work, and I admire you very much, and I'm tickled to death to hear you speak because you just are so inspirational. Do you see, you think about the trends. I look a lot at trends.
Before we leave this community foundation real quick.
Yeah.
The model you'd want to look at would be the state of Nebraska. Nebraska is full of small farms, and they have community foundations all over the place. Sandy and I are familiar with some communities in Nebraska which have fewer than 500 people on it, and they have maybe $10 million in the community foundation. In Indiana, I work for the Philanthropic Association out of Indianapolis, and we recognize that there's going to be such an enormous demand on money as the public money was drying up. Governments just didn't have any money, not state or county. And so what we did, personally, the Eli Lilly Foundation, we formed community foundations in 65 different communities. In one little community, Portland, Indiana, which isn't much bigger than here in McKee, they've now got $27 million. Remember I talked about the population aging. There's going to be an enormous transition of wealth in this country. If you look at the demographics, I've been studying for years now, there's an enormous, this is a window of opportunity right now to capture the kind of money that we're talking about here. You need, and I know that you're already working on getting the foundation going. So a revenue stream that you can use on a regular basis. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We had Mr. Grisham here. We also did a Brushy Fork Flexi grant in Estill County. We called it Engaged Communities. We brought Vaughn and Sandy, and we got organized. And we have some good things going on and helped our community. So I certainly think I would encourage you to really get organized as much as possible. Engage as many in the people in the community as you can. We've not built the naysayers bench, but we think we're going to put it outside the business incubator. We're going to set it up right out there.
We hate these naysayers.
Yeah, we got them.
I just really go into order. Sandy, I'll try to get off the topic because I start cursing when I talk about naysayers. We can't shoot the bastards, but I'd sure like to.
But sometimes they bring some good ideas, though. Once in a while, you get them at the table. Once in a while, they'll say something that'll be good.
Great.
Well, listen, one thing I think in the demographics, too. So we've got an aging population, and we've got, I kind of feel like there's going to be this snap-back effect to trades, because one of the things that's happening, I do a lot of reading across the nation, what's going on. And, interesting, in manufacturing in West Virginia, they can't find people. They cannot find people to fill these advanced manufacturing positions. So I kind of feel like, I wonder what your thoughts would be. I feel like we're going to snap back to the trades because, Association of the Manufacturers, electrical workers, plumbers, all these trades, these are now being done by older folks who are going to retire. And I feel like there's going to be this snapback where that's going to be the thing. Yeah, I agree with you. You're not going to necessarily need a 4-year degree, but we're going to need, look at this building here. We're going to need someone that can run the electrical wire. The knowledge economy is not going to cut it. We might be able to watch a video on YouTube, but we're not going to know how to wire a building.
But even the knowledge economy, a lot of these that upgrading with skill. We're in a vocational school right now with tremendous potential. Other questions or comments, please, I welcome them. Yes. Okay. Lee County began to do leadership development classes in 1949. 1949. They did them in every small rural community. They have more than 8,000 volunteers. And it's just the Tupelo spirit says you become involved. And somebody asked me, well, what happens if they don't become involved? Well, they'll talk behind your back. They may say it right to your face. Pirate. They'll call you a pirate. You're coming in and you're stealing stuff and taking advantage of this good community but not giving back. And so what happens is they won't play golf with you. They won't play golf with you. They won't invite you to their house. You're a pariah if you don't get involved. They don't want you. I was talking to one guy who'd come in from a Midwestern factory, and he said, "Boy, those people aren't kidding. You get involved, or you just have a dead social life. Nobody wants to do anything with you." Well, I'd love to see that kind of spirit. I belonged to a church in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where we had that kind of commitment. And we'd say, if you want to just come and sit on Sunday, go to the First Baptist Church. They like those kind of people. They got a lot of them. We don't like those kind of people. We want people who are engaged. Other comments, questions, please. Yeah. I wanted to bring this up deliberately to say if we can do it there, in those circumstances, there's not a community in the United States that has an alternative. They've got to do it. Let me ask you this question. What is the best predictor of how children do in school? What's the answer? What's the best predictor of how children are going to do in school? What's the answer? Pardon? Parental involvement. We have known that for 50 years. The first thing, if you want to come to this school, you will sign a pledge, a sheet of paper, that says, I'm going to take an interest in my child's education. We don't want you coming up to the school. Just say, Johnny, how'd you do in your math? Let me see your papers. At the risk of extending this too long, you must, if you come into the school, you must come and register your child. You've got to be there. And here's what the principal's going to tell you. He's going to say, you have honored us by bringing to us your most prized possession, your child. And we take that responsibility seriously. Then he shows a PowerPoint of all the things they're going to do in reading and science and math and English and social science. Then he says to them, but we cannot educate your child. Let that sink in. We cannot educate your child. What? What am I sending there for? Unless you take part in this, your child will be half educated. We'll do our part. You do your part. Then he goes on with this. He said, it is biologically impossible for a school to conceive and bear a child. It is biologically impossible for a school to conceive and bear a child. We haven't born any of these children. They're your children. They are not ours. They do not cease to be your children when you drop them off in the morning. They're still your responsibility. And we won't allow you to get out of it. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we start them at 3 years of age. We have one of the best early childhood education programs in the United States. That's why we have no dropouts. We start them at 3 years of age. So we have to pay for those. We think the school, I'm a strong supporter of public schools. When they asked me to come out and help them, I said, no, I support public schools. And I'm not going to support an elite school. And they said, well, we're all black. I said, I don't care. I don't want to support an elite school. And they said, we're a first-rate school. And I said, I know that. What we have found is, again, if you have an idea that good, you're going to find the money. That doesn't answer your question, but we find the money. Now, you cannot send your child free. We'll help with the tuition. If you can't help with the tuition, come up and help mop our floors, deliver Meals on Wheels, work on our landscaping. But we're not going to give it to you free. But we found the money. That doesn't answer your question, I know. It's not easy. We think this will work in a public school. In fact, I can take you to Houston, Minnesota, where we do almost exactly the same thing in an all-white public school with no dropouts. Do almost exactly the same thing. It's quite doable in public schools. They also have no dropouts. Other questions? Yes.
Do any of these model communities have strong homeschooling programs?
That's just beginning to be a phenomenon. It's not big enough in any of them for me to comment on that. All of them have them, but they're not widespread enough, so I don't have the data on that.
Many of the public schools have unionized workforce, and
Yeah.
the quality of education can drop, therefore, and so I think that's one of the reasons for a growing homeschool movement.
Probably one of the things that contributes to it. Yep. What other questions do you have?
Is Mississippi a right-to-work state?
It is, yeah. But again, in Tupelo, the reason these industries come there, they come there for one reason and one reason only. They can make more money there. And they make more money there because of the workforce. I mean, you can go anywhere, almost anywhere in the South, but without the same workforce. They know the key is the workforce. And if that education slips. Now, in Tupelo, a majority of the students are African American in the schools. They're African American. That doesn't make any difference with us. So we're white and we're black.
How do you engage the business community in a small town when they're the only person running the business? And how do you get them engaged when they can't shut down and come over to, if you're going to do a chat and chew?
Well, the chat and chews are at 5:30 on Thursday afternoon, and you're not going to get them all. Here's what I've found. The question is being asked is an absolutely critical, central question. It's absolutely central to this whole thing. It's the question that's asked so often. How do you create time to do this kind of work? And what we found in the successful communities is that by and large, that individual has to set some priorities and say, these are the things that are the most important to me. And this is what I'm going to do. And you arrange your schedule accordingly. There are people who can't get off running their own business. I know that. But we live in our little town of 357, and there's a lady who runs an antique shop, and antiques are not going well since the Depression began. And this woman opens early and closes late, and yet she still has put out flowers all over the community and then waters them every night because that's a priority for her. One of the things, your place there at the telephone service is so beautifully landscaped. I'll offer this now, and I'm going to offer it in the exit. I would contact your universities and say, could you send some students from your landscaping that could help us at our community? Your community is attractive, but could you help us with our entry points or gateways to make our town so attractive to just knock your socks off? What that will do is build a sense of pride about as quickly as anything, is make your place look loved. Go to all your public spaces, make it look loved, and around all your schools, and make them look loved. Other questions? Nobody asked me that question, but yeah.
What kind of problems do you encounter when a number of your business people live in other places? They own property here and they run businesses here, but they don't live here.
Well, you work with what you got. That's all you can do, is you work with what you got. And we could say, well, we really wish it had it otherwise, but that's not the reality. So we just work with what we've got, and what we've got is who we've got, and we do the best we can with that. In our little, well, I won't go into that, but anyway, you just work with what you've got. Yes.
We know that education is the key to economic development.
Yes.
Every study that you find will point to that.
Yep.
What can we do to get the school system highly engaged in this process with each of the schools, the principals, and teachers?
Lots of conversations and lots of commitment. Did all of you hear the question? Let me tell you what one African American church did in a little community. This is a very small little African American community. He recognized that in his church, all African American, that in a world dominated by computers, most of the people who came to that church were scared to death of computers and didn't know how to use them. So what he did was that he convinced the church to take one of their Sunday school classes and turn it over and make it a computer center and let the kids teach the adults. And it's working. In a lot of the communities I work with, one of the big problems in schools is school dropout. And I work with a lot of people who just give their time in the afternoon to create an after-school program that works with the kids to reduce the amount of dropouts. So you have conversations with the educational system. The key, of course, is the principals. Principals who think that this is so important. But you'll find most of the people, the teachers that I know, want to do a really good job. They want to. We had a hard time getting teachers to even come to our African American school. We almost had to give them battle pay just to come into our neighborhood. And so we worked slowly. But you're going to have to work on many levels to answer your question. You got to go to first-rate school board. That's a responsibility often of the citizens. You've got to elect people to get a first-rate school board. Engage principals that want to do this, and the teachers. You work with the people who want to do it. There are people you can't change. You work with what you got. And that's what we've always done. Is we just work with what we've got. If we've only got one or two, we work with them.
In the African American school, we worked to help the teachers who were below par by supporting them if they wanted to go back to college or if they wanted additional training, and we engaged the folks from North Dallas to help them. So we invested in them, and they felt like they were invested in the school too.
Yeah, we just upgraded. All our teachers needed to be upgraded in our 100% of them. We just had to upgrade them. Other questions?
One thing I'd like to say, over some of that committee, Jackson County School System has initiated dropouts, graduation rates. How that makes the schools more of an inviting place to be, so that kids will want to come, want to study, want to learn.
And the smart thing there is to go to schools that are doing this. Don't waste your time trying to reinvent the wheel. Go to schools that are already doing it and learn from them. Jake, we'll see you later. Thank you for coming. I know we've run way over time. I want to thank all of you, and I want to leave you with the thoughts of Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that thoughtful and concerned citizens can change the world." Never doubt, she said, that thoughtful and concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, she said, it's the only thing that has.